Also from chapter 113, you write, advancing spirits use intuition over experience as their guiding light or authority. Advancing spirits, having experienced and learned through ages of suffering, ignorance, illusion, and attachment, mature to subtler levels of knowing, sensing, and realizing without the physical or gross counterpart. So are you saying that knowing at the intuitive level is a result of former lifetime experiences? In other words, is using one's intuition, acknowledging that one has already been there and done that already?
Good question. All knowing is from before. All knowing is already before. Now, when, how far back, that's a question, right? Maybe an unanswerable question. Maybe there is no answer to it as far as that. Maybe it's just knowing before. That's intuition, knowing before. Simply and completely, knowing before. You already, in other words, you already know. It's like when you pick up a book by the great masters of, let's say, the spiritual traditions, and you as a person, who hasn't got that background or traditional bias or whatever, you read it and you say, no, this is true. How are you going to know it's true? Unless you knew it before. You can't even get close to saying it's true unless you already knew. So there's a knowingness in us already, that is already from before. How far back? Well, it goes back to the beginning, which is now. It's always beginning now. That's how far back you go. You go straight to now. Everything comes back to now. Because you can't go further back than now, except in your mind. So it's back to now. Now you are that awareness, which is good. In other words, if you're reading the wisdom teachings, then you are mirroring your own awareness. Now that's like an easy thing to say, it's a casual thing to say, but it's profound. So if that is your own awareness, why aren't you living that way? Why is it so hard for you to live that way? See? I'm not asking for an answer, by the way. It's just a question. See? That is your awareness. The awareness of the masters is your awareness, so you're part of the master awareness, but you can't wait to get out of the bookstore and go to the next bar and get loaded and socialize and start dancing and forget your mastery. So then that's what it is. You're pretending to be unenlightened when in fact you may be completely, totally enlightened, but refuse to own up to it in a manner of speaking. Right?
Can spiritual progress for some individuals produce anxiety and or cause nightmares?
Yes, of course. When you're beginning, let's say when you're moving from the ordinary physical state of consciousness, you start realizing that there's an astral plane, and that astral plane is the plane of spirits. Yeah, it can be terrifying. Right? It can be, but it's a progression. So it's not that it's terrifying in a sense. It's terrifying like being on the roller coaster is terrifying. It's a new experience. And so it's a certain kind of terrification that you can transcend very quickly once you realize it's not real. There's no real danger. Your experience is new and you're not used to being tossed around physically on the roller coaster. And similarly, you're not used to be tossed around in terms of your inner perceptics in the astral plane. That's because it's a roller coaster ride. Similar. See? And you get used to it. You settle down and say, oh, is that all it is? Yeah, okay, exactly. Oh, so they're not this, it's not real yet. So yeah, some things are real. And those things you have to get used to. And then you have to command those things. The things that frighten you, you need to command. Because that's your purpose. Remember, you were just in the bookstore, in the Enlightenment bookstore, reading the words of the Master, and you say, I know these words, I am that. So you have a lot that you can command already, and you should do that.
Can the anxiety and nightmares be a sign that one is progressing too fast or not fast enough?
It could be that. If you're reacting to what is being burnt off, then you could say that it's maybe too much for you. But who's to say? Anything that you're being, let's say, in reaction to, is good. It depends on who you're with and how they are helping you understand the process of getting through your own darknesses, your own neuroses, your own fears, your own confusions. Right? We're talking about massive, like mountains of this in everybody's ancestry. So to be able to switch from neuroses to happiness for more than a second is a wonderment in itself. See? To sit here in peace for a few moments without these kinds of, let's say, attacks and storms, say, from the inside. That's a wonder. See? And it proves they don't exist, except when we validate them. They don't exist. Not now or ever, but in your particular karmic case, you've given a lot of empowerment to them, so they may exist for the individual. But they don't really exist. But they do exist at that level. So if you go deeper or higher to another level, then you find out what exists there. And darkness is its own level. And light is the source of all of it, so you can always get to light. You always have a chance to get beyond darkness because of the fact of light. Without light, there is no darkness.
How do you distinguish someone who is advancing spiritually from someone who is spiritually immature? Are the distinctions between the two always obvious, or are there subtle differences?
It's always obvious. Right? Spiritual person is more tolerant, more cooperative, more knowledgeable, more gracious, more understanding, more peaceful by nature. But that doesn't mean a peaceful, at least spiritual person is not a warrior. They may not be the Christ and be able to turn the other cheek, but they can be absolutely spiritual, very, very well advanced, to be able to defend themselves and their family in good purpose, and not be brutal and not be barbarian. See? They can be dignified in what it is that their karma is and discharging that. So we're talking about spiritual qualities, very, very noble qualities, respecting qualities, dignified qualities. That's very obvious. And then you're talking about psychic abilities, that's not so obvious, and that's very subtle.
So are you saying then that it's possible to progress spiritually in certain ways while at the same time being stuck or stunted in other ways?
Well, listen, you need one to have the other. Without being stuck and stunted and feel failed and feel abused, where's there room for spirituality or improvement? See? These are the signs that indicate for many spirits that they're troubled and they need to do something about it. And the thing that you do about it is really trying to get beyond that. Because they're working, let's say, from the impulse that it shouldn't be there. Say, no, this is not right. Perfect. Yeah? So there is enlightenment in the recognition of the darkness. That is enlightenment, to see it for what it is. So I just got my ass whooped. Right? I just got kicked in the face. That's enlightenment. Right? Because you are stating a fact. So that is the Dharma. It's a fact of what happened. See? Now you need to know what to do and follow that up to be more consistent with the fact. See? So we need to know what the facts are, what the experience is. Then we need to know the wisdom of it, which means the machinery that caused it. And then the next step would be the machinery that does not create that in the future, so that we are free. Having understood the lesson of what creates this, that, whatever, say, no, now I know how to create this, which is not putting myself in a position to have my face beat up. So then you own it, and you make sure that your practice is such that you don't wind up in harm's way. The best way to do that we know, sooner than later, is to be peaceful.
Also from chapter 113, you write, "Unfolding spirit souls must inevitably undergo a critical departure from the circus of the rounds of karmic social existence. Often such a change brings about an extraordinary reaction from others in the home or workplace. When one begins to practice, is that often one of the first things that changes? Their social life ends or fades away?"
No, not particularly, because spiritual practice is not against anything, really. Spiritual practice means you take a look at what it is in you, whether it's social, let's say distraction, to a fault, or, to a virtue. You have to determine that, whether it's sexual distraction to a fault or to a virtue. The individual is in charge of that. You have to determine that. Everything that we see spiritually is always about the social, but it's a matter of bringing a different quality and sanity to the social that is more important, and civility to the social. That's for, I guess we might say, improving the social. So you need to bring civility, so you need this sense of nobility already. You need to have a dignified sense of reality. And that all people are equally, potentially, see, dignified beings. Each one wants to be ruling their own kingdom. This is pretty fair and universal. See? And so we're talking about self-respecting people who respect others, first and foremost. And you work from there. That's a native approach. You know, that's not particularly Christian in the same sense where you do unto others what you want done to yourself. But because that doesn't work. We already realize that doesn't work. You got to do it because you respect yourself and you go for people to respect in turn. Now, it doesn't mean other people are going to like it. Some people may not want you to respect them because they may be hell-bent on having opponents and enemies. So we have to be ready for that. But you want to go deep and say, well, do I need to confront this enemy? Does the enemy in me need to confront this enemy in them? So you transcend the whole image of enemies, and you become your own friend, and you have no enemies. See? And you let that guide you to where there are no enemies, so to speak, even though this whole world is likely to turn into an enemy before too long, if everybody and their uncles and their brothers have guns, you know, to no end. You know, everybody becomes a gunnick. See? So we want to make sure that we keep the peace here, and let them have their guns, and let us have the ability to find peace while we can. And enjoy it for what it's worth. Amen.
From chapter 113, right? Does not each spirit soul at night while sleeping enter the isolation and indulgence of the very personal, subtle, or dream worlds? Is it a sin to sleep? Is it a sin to rest oneself from the terribly mechanical demands of the exhaustingly mechanical and busyness game work approach to social survival and life?
Before I answer that question, I want to say we are not guns, but we have to respect the guns. We are not guns, but we can respect the guns. You understand? See, guns and all of these things that we see, we are not warfare, but we can respect it. And what it is. See, we are not defense, departments of defense, but we can respect it, because there may come a time when we have to protect ourselves. Yeah. And very few people are willing to put themselves just like that on the line, right? When their families are at stake. So we have to be native about that. Okay? We have to deal with that when we get to that. But as a rule, we're talking about respecting others, and we respect others. And whatever others do, we respect them as long as it doesn't impose upon our privacy and our sanctity. And so that's pretty fair-minded. Question now.
Does spiritual practice alleviate one's need for rest? Does it provide
spiritual practice is a form of rest. It is a form of rest. It's a form of healing, see, if it's done properly. But it's not for everybody, at least not in the forms that I'm familiar with in terms of yogic forms. See, those forms of spiritual practice seem to be a bit more culturally awkward for people. So you have to adapt yourself to that. See. I wasn't always able to go put my legs into a full lotus. So I had to train myself to do that. See? And so if that's a practice relative to posture, yeah, that's going to be awkward. So what is tolerant is that people sit in chairs and sit up so you can do the exercises. So we're talking about exercises here. The spiritual practice should be exercises that enable you to manage your self-consciousness relative to the superconsciousness and the unconsciousness, as they may be called. See? And that's what spiritual practice is. Having more interest in the superconscious than in the unconscious as the negative and reactive reality of our own undoing and our own madness. So we want to be able to understand that. That's what spiritual practice is about. Not just parading up and down the streets with signs and placards saying, well, this religion is the best religion. No, that's not what spiritual practice is about. See, it's not politics. It's not political. See, it's individual. Spiritual practice is individual transformation from suffering to, let's say, well-being.
These last few questions that I have are from chapter 114, which is titled For the Breast of One's Life. Is motherhood and feminine nature undervalued in the world today?
Well, you'd have to ask mothers in a certain way about that, but women in general are still working towards a certain kind of equality. That's pretty obvious, right? Our sisters and our mothers, right? Our daughters and our wives or whatever, and our grandmothers are wanting a fair share. That seems to be common sense. I don't really see that as politics. I see that as economics. See? And so it's not about sexism. It's really about fairness, common sense fairness. Because some women women raised us all, for the most part, and in the beginning helped to shape our lives, gave us the discipline. So we have, I think, a spiritual obligation to help the motherhood, in humanity, have its due, for sure, fairness. Right? Mothers are always going to be more powerful than their children, if they know how to be. Mothers always mothers. My mother, Sachinami, just called me her baby all the time. You're always going to be my baby. And by the way, that body you're wearing, that's my body. So you take good care of that body. That's my body you took from me. Yeah, good wisdom from a mother. So yeah, no, we should respect our mothers, no doubt about that. Right? Our source points, right? We came from them. Right? Even if we don't like them and their differences, we can tolerate them because of the power that they've given us, right? And the grace they have allowed us to use here from them.
In certain societies where there is an obvious imbalance of feminine masculine energy, would this be a cause, at least in part, for turmoil and destruction?
Well, men make it that way. That's men have a genius for making turmoil and destruction out of nothing. Right? They'll invent it. They'll just do it for fun. Right? Men love it. It's in the man to do that. You just go and punch your face in and bash you. And men with the testosterone just love that, right? So that's instinctually correct for men. Not all men. Most men are more, let's say, tamed in that sense, more balanced in that, more kind in that, less bullyish, less, let's say, barbaric than that. So yeah, we have something to balance in ourselves as men, and it's heartness. It's really about heartness. So all of us need to get to a state of heartness, and even those that would appear to be the bullies and the big bad guys, they have a heart too. They just like to show off their testosterone side, and so we can appreciate that. We have sons, we have brothers, we have uncles, we have cousins, who are all just brutes. But it's playful. It's not what they are, it's what they're acting. The potential is there for the spiritual awakeness. It's never not there. Because sometimes it's with that punch in the nose when you see stars. When you wake up, you have your awakening at that point. Why not?
Is finding balance between the masculine and the feminine within us key to reaching an enlightened state?
Say that again.
Is finding balance between the masculine and the feminine within us key to reaching an enlightened state?
Well, I'm not sure an enlightened state is really dependent upon concepts of polarity, particularly. But when you reach, let's say, this state of okayness, right? I call it radical common senseness. When you reach that point where you're just okay, nobody to fight with, nothing to fight about, where your emotions are like not reacting and storming your consciousness and putting you in these kind of rages. When you start to unrage, you can have a state of consciousness and that is more balanced and more peaceful. There's no question about it. We can do that. We are that. That's the important thing. We are that now, but we're not being that. No. We're not being the real. We're being the acting, but we're not being the real. We're not being the heart. We're being the self-mind and the body's machinery. We're being that. Nothing wrong with it, but it has a limit. See? When is it going to be time enough for you to be the heart? When somebody dies, can you be the heart? When somebody's tragically destroyed, that's close to you, then you feel it. So you feel your heart for the first time in your life, unlike any other time, when it's full of pain. You come to consciousness because of that. See? Whatever it takes, let it be, so that we can be the heart. See?
Who has more sexual power, men or women, and why?
No, that's, we'd probably have to go to the porno industry to see that, make that determination. But if we're talking man to woman, the game is on. Who has more power, right? Whose ego is stronger? Right? Who's tougher? Who's more angry? It really depends. But really, no one really has more power than the other. We can act that part in terms of our games and power plays over and against other peeps. But there's no real power. That's ego tripping. You can trip and do that, but you want to undo that so that your heart rules, so there's more common understanding of what human nature is, and so that we are more fair and more, let's say, on the ground with peeps, and more real with peeps as a result of that, see? So the power plays, who cares about that? The power plays are for the power players. See? Once you get outside of the field of ego, then it's just heart for heart, heart to heart. See? Heart in heart. Very simple. Right? It's not taking anything out of the zest you have for life. It's just you know how to be on common terms with other people, see? And caring for them. It's good. It's good to have some heart. We need to practice that more. See? Worldwide. See? Okay.